Blending up fun, freshly frozen beverages from shakes and smoothies to bowls and cocktails has never been easier than the For Real by Riches back-of-house blender. Simply grab a For Real by Riches frozen base cup, place it in a blender, and press start for hands-free, mess-free blending in under a minute. Customize or serve it as is? It's that easy. Learn more about For Real by Riches at richesusa.com/for-real-food service.
Hey there, welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I am Sam Oches, editor-in-chief here at NRN, and this is the show where I give you an all-access pass to the restaurant industry's most influential decision makers. This week, I'm talking with Denise Tran, the CEO and founder at Bun Mee, a Vietnamese fast casual with 4 locations in the San Francisco Bay Area. Bun Mee has been around since 2011, having opened within the first fast casual boom of the early 2010s. And now, after 13 years and many important lessons, it's ready to grow through franchising. Denise joined the podcast to talk about what it's like to launch a business selling food that most people have never heard of, and how she's much stronger having navigated the difficult operating environment that is San Francisco. In this interview, you will learn more about why airport locations are tough work but well worth the effort, why having your house in order can help you through crises, and why there is no perfect time to grow. By the way, if you, like Denise, are a leader of an emerging restaurant chain, and if you're also looking for resources to grow, I highly suggest that you check out Create, the event for emerging restaurateurs. It's coming up this October 8th through 11th in Nashville, kicking off with our investment summit that brings together 20 plus investors with emerging restaurant leaders for education and networking. That rolls right into our main Create programming, which includes speakers from Texas Roadhouse, Dutch Bros, Small Sliders, Swig, Cooper's Hawk, and dozens more brands. Register for this fun and informational event for free by heading to create.nrn.com. Jumping now into my interview with Bun Mee's Denise Tran. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview, as I will share my 5 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Okay, I'm sitting down with Denise Tran, the founder and CEO of Bun Mee in San Francisco. Denise, thanks for taking some time today.
Hi, Sam. Good to be here.
Yeah, great to catch up with you, Denise. You and I caught up several years ago. We first met. Bun Mee is such a fun, fresh, trendy concept. This is Vietnamese sandwiches, but I want you to sort of set this up because for those who have not been to San Francisco to experience this brand, tell us a little bit more about the concept of Bun Mee.
Yeah, so we are a San Francisco-based gourmet Vietnamese fast casual restaurant brand. Our focus is on delicious, chef-driven, innovative banh mi sandwiches and creative bowls and salads. We have 4 locations currently. We are in the Pacific Heights neighborhood, Financial District. We have 2 locations at SFO, Terminals 1 and 3. And then we have a new store opening in a month. But the concept itself came about, back in, 2009. I was living in New York City and I had just gotten engaged, and I was going through a pivotal moment in life where I lost my dad. And it was a time in life where I thought to myself, life is short. I need to be intentional about what I want to do next. And is law really what I want to do with the rest of my life? And it was this mindset, and along with a trip to Vietnam to take my dad's ashes back to Vietnam, because he'd passed away suddenly from cancer, and his wish was to have his ashes brought back. And it was my first time since leaving the country when I was practically a baby to connect with the country. And it was through that experience, eating street food there, traveling for 3 weeks on my own, that I was inspired when I came back to leave my law career and open a banh mi shop. And so it's just the most roundabout way and kind of not the most direct line to getting into the restaurant business. But it was an inspiration that I had um, through my travels, through my connection, obviously, with the food there. And I wanted to bring that experience back. And I did that. And that's kind of the genesis of Bun Mee when we opened.
And had you ever worked in a restaurant? I mean, coming out of the law, out of a law firm, I mean, did you know what you were doing?
Yeah, good question. I worked at a restaurant as a hostess, when I was in college and in high school, but no formal restaurant training. I love to cook. My mother's an amazing cook, so definitely growing up in her kitchen and helping her out, and that was my training, I guess, for doing this, but no formal training.
Gotcha. And you said you were inspired when you were in New York, but you opened in San Francisco. Are you from San Francisco? Is that why you wanted to open there?
I grew up in New Orleans and have
Oh, okay.
lived, I grew up in New Orleans, lived in the West Coast and in many places, and ended up in New York. I've moved around a lot growing up, but I ended up in San Francisco when my fiance and and my husband eventually, we decided to move out to San Francisco for his job. And that was a convenient and straightforward decision to launch Bun Mee here in San Francisco. And that's how I ended up in San Francisco, actually.
Got it. Yeah, I'm curious because if I set the scene here,
Hmm.
2011, you open your first restaurant, your first banh mi in San Francisco. 2011. I mean, that's coming out of the recession. Really, the advent of a fast casual boom. I mean, I think at that time, fast casual just was really trendy because I think it hit this sweet spot of quality still at a value coming out of the recession. And so you saw this flood of new concepts opening. In San Francisco, there was a ton of exciting innovation going on there. But take me to opening the first restaurant in San Francisco. What was the response like? How do you feel like things went in those early years?
Yeah, I when we opened in 2011, it was still the the market for banh mi sandwiches was still very fragmented, very mom and pop. It was like that also in New York City when I was living there as well. And so fast casual was having a boom, but not necessarily for banh mi sandwiches. So it was
Mm,
still considered really high risk to open. A, my idea was to open a fast casual banh mi restaurant concept, and when I got a location in prime real estate, you know, um, in Pacific Heights neighborhood, which was primarily a very affluent, very white, primarily white neighborhood. It was at the time taking a risk because I wasn't quite sure that the market was ready. Because at prior to my opening, if you wanted to get a banh mi sandwich, you would have to go to the Tenderloin. You would have to, just go to a primarily Vietnamese or, neighborhood to find this sandwich, and you had to search for it. So Pacific Heights at the time when we were opening, our first, gosh, like several years, we would have to have our employees explain to everyone what a banh mi is. Like there was a
mm.
script, and it was really about explaining to our customers what a banh mi is, so that they understood what it was that they were eating. Because it was accessible, they knew it was a sandwich, but they've never. Most of our customers at the time didn't even know what a banh mi Vietnamese sandwich is. So in the beginning, there was a lot of education that was involved in telling our guests what it was. And but I feel like the food speaks for itself, and it just took off almost immediately. People just resonated with it. Um, I think food just translates naturally for everyone, and if it's good food, it's really good food, right? So once they understood what all the ingredients were, what was in it, we were off to the races. I think we were just um, really well received in those early years, and I'm really thankful for that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it helped too. Obviously, banh mi sandwiches being not as familiar to Americans, but sandwiches being familiar to Americans. So if you said to somebody, here is a Vietnamese dish, they might be like, oh, I don't know Vietnamese food. But if you say, well, here's a sandwich with pork, and they get that a little bit more. So you might have had more of an advantage than even some other global concepts that were serving
Right,
dishes unfamiliar. But I'm
right.
curious how that evolved over the years. I mean, do you feel like, because I think the last decade has been a real incredible revolution in global foods, particularly in fast casual. Do you feel like that's changed where people have gotten more and more familiar with it?
Definitely. It's changed significantly, and which I'm really happy about. People are more open about trying things, are more adventurous. People will come in and maybe try a more adventurous item. We would have sardines on our menu sometimes, or, we'll have, we'll have, we'll have your traditional, chicken and, grilled chicken and grilled pork, which is easy for folks, but then obviously people will come back and try a sandwich with pate in it, and I think people just become more adventurous as they try it. And over the years, it's not even something that anyone asks about anymore. It's just they just come in and they just order, and I have seen that it's gotten a lot easier we didn't have to educate anymore. That wasn't the focus anymore after a few years, which is really nice.
Sure. All right, so let's go through the years here. So you
Hmm.
opened at a SFO at San Francisco's airport,
Hmm.
and I hate talking about this because we're all so sick of it. But of course, COVID happens, and San Francisco was probably, for all of us outside of San Francisco, it was among the worst in the country for the impact of the pandemic on a city. So I'm just curious, from your point of view, getting through that season and then recovering from that season, being primarily totally based in San Francisco. What was that experience like?
Yeah, the last 3 or 4 years has been the most challenging of my career, um, but it was also the most transformative for us in our company. If When you think back, I can't even find a similar example of when you find out within a week that you need to shut down your entire business, lay off 90% of your staff, and not know when that's going to change and not have any other information. So it was, it was a scary time to say the least. And that whole experience has taught me so many lessons though that I've taken from that. And over the years though, as we reopened, we had to ramp up our company again. Basically start a new company from scratch in the sense of reopening our stores, rehiring, retraining. And so during that downtime though, we had the luxury of having some time to focus inward and to invest in our own innovation, because I felt like at some point things would be back to normal again and that we just needed to be ready. So we wanted to focus on our operations, look at what we're doing. And during that time, I used some of the PPP money to invest in that work for us. And so we did things like review our menu, um, throw out things that were working, innovate on things that were, doubling down on things that were really working, innovate on new items. We we streamlined our processes. And so during that time, so it was transformative in the sense that we had some time to think about our operations and think about our company. And at this point, we'd been in business for 9 years. And so it was valuable time to take a step back and focus on that innovation. And I think that was crucial in where we're at right now and the success that
For
we're
sure.
having right now.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, because frankly, you're lucky to have gotten to the other side of it, right? For so many, and it speaks volumes, of course, to the loyal customer behind Bun Mee. But being in San Francisco, the epicenter of technology and innovation, so many people in the pandemic really upgraded around technology specifically and adapting digital ordering, finding, you said, streamlining your operations. A lot of people really figured out how to do that. What does that look like in practice for you, specifically with like technology and operations, and how you were able to adapt to those kinds of tools that were made available?
Well, I mean, we've switched to just contactless ordering, app ordering. We've had pay kiosks, at our stations now, and I think that's where fast casual is moving towards, is using that technology to make ordering as efficient and quickly as possible, through apps or in the stores. And we know that just in San Francisco, our customers are meeting us through third-party apps, and that's something that's just continuing to happen. And so finding ways to attract those customers back into our doors, to direct them to us, but also meeting them where they're at, has been a balance that we've had to work on to make sure that we can continue to grow with the changing consumer behaviors that's happening post COVID. Because as I've seen, people are not eating out as much. They're ordering online more, and they've just gotten used to that. So we've had to adapt to that change in behavior. So our stores, we don't look for stores with larger footprints. We continue to maintain that our stores stay small because that seems to be the trend that is sticking. So making those adjustments is crucial to continuing your success,
Sure. Well, I have to ask about the airport locations because, a lot of operators, I think, I don't know that airport is right for everybody. Let's put it that way, because of course there's a lot of, a lot of different systems you have to work around as part of an airport. Now, San Francisco, I mean, SFO, that is a much more, I guess, progressive, you could say, airport as far as food goes. I know there are a lot of great local options there. But I'm curious about operating Bun Mee out of SFO, how you've adapted the business to SFO, what kind of lessons maybe you've learned in running a restaurant out of an airport.
Lots of questions there. The airport was, that move to go into the airport was an exciting time for us. We saw the airport expansion as a means to expand our brand to millions of travelers and folks that go through the airport via, tourists or local business travelers. But it was another way to not only have a storefront there, but also have brand exposure. And so getting into the airport was a point of pride for me. It was not a difficult, not an easy path. It's not so easy to get into the airport. So when we got in, we were really excited, and especially at San Francisco, because it is known to be a very gourmet forward airport that's very focused on really great food in the city and presenting that to passengers and travelers. And so when we got there, though, it was a huge learning curve for us because operating at the airport is an entirely different environment. We had labor unions, understanding how to work with labor unions at the airport, understanding how to um, deal with security clearances, and all our employees at the airport need extensive security clearances. Just even operating at an airport when there are security concerns even at the airport, and so there's just a lot of different layers that you have to think about that you do, in addition to running a restaurant business. That is unique to the airport. And so that learning curve was high. And so it did take us some time to figure that out and to learn how to operate there and how to be successful there. And on top of that, the airport required us to be open 10, 12 hours a day. And we were at the time a 11 o'clock to 8 o'clock concept. And so then we had to come up with a breakfast, menu to meet that demand. And that wasn't what we did at the time. So we adjusted to have a breakfast menu offering. And and also just the complexities of working in small spaces at the airport, we had to just pick our best hits, just things that our menu that are really great that we think would work at the airport that we just didn't, we weren't, that we could execute there really well and not have an extended menu at the airport. So there was a lot of, revising of our concept to meet where we were at and to meet the airport demands. So we made those adjustments, and I think that they were all welcomed, and it's been a good move for us.
Yeah, and it seems like if you can operate out of an airport, and you mentioned you're looking at smaller footprints for even just your regular standalones, I imagine you can probably put one of these really anywhere you wanted to if you can run one out of an airport, right? Because not only can you meet the demand of the busy customer, but you have to do a lot in a little space. Do you feel like that opens paths for you into other real estate opportunities?
Definitely. That's where we're looking at, is just being able to go into smaller spaces. We've been able to figure out how to do very, very high volume sales in a small space, and our team has gotten really good at and efficient at doing that. And so that continues to be a part of our layout plans as we think about growth in and outside of the airport. And as you know, rents are high, and it continues to skyrocket. So if you can do what you do in a smaller footprint, it really helps the bottom line.
Totally. Well, and speaking of that, I have to ask, I mean, operating in San Francisco, in the state of California, I know the recent wage laws don't affect you. But I imagine, you guys, it's tough. You guys really have to adjust and be as strong as you can be as a business to make this work because of that. Tell me about the operating environment of San Francisco. Now, I'll be honest with you, a lot of the headlines I read about, Twitter bailing on San Francisco and, all these things, I think media like to try to frame it as this apocalyptic wasteland. But it's one of my favorite cities in this country, San Francisco. Such a wonderful city. What's the operating environment like out there right now?
Yes, it is hard living in San Francisco and loving the city, and having a business here, to read all the negative news about the city. It breaks my heart. And so I want to tell everyone, San Francisco is still a great city to visit. Just the other day, I was on a hike and overlooking the bay and the Golden Gate Bridge. And marvel at how gorgeous the city is, and it has just natural beauty that it's you can easily take for granted, and not many cities have this. So it's still a really beautiful city to visit and to come eat, and food is still such a big part of our culture. But it is a challenging city to operate a restaurant in as well, and I think that is the same in other cities with rising costs in labor and food and rents, and it's all going up. So it's challenging, but we've been really fortunate to be able to meet that challenge with the changes that we've made in our business in the last 3 or 4 years, that we've been profitable. So I feel like that's the catalyst for our growth that we're looking at right now, is that we realize that if we've been able to be profitable in a harder market, a more competitive market, that we've got a great chance at being successful in other markets that may not be as challenging cost wise,
Yeah. Yeah, it's an absolutely a great point. It's like something like that. I always think about it in terms of like baseball. When a batter's on deck, they put that weight on the bat to make it heavier, and then so that they take the weight off, and they can it feels so easy to swing the bat, right? That's kind of
Right.
like this, right? Where you guys have
Yeah.
been proved in one of the most difficult cities to run a business in, and to your point, you're going to be able to hopefully ace it any other cities you go into because of that. So this does
Yeah.
get us to today. So
Yeah.
2024, you've been in business for 13 years.
I know. I
You
can't believe
it's
that.
incredible. Lucky 13. So you've been
Lucky
talking about it the
13.
whole conversation, but this business has adapted and grown and evolved. And I'm just curious, from day one to now, what do you feel like you've learned? What are some of the lessons you've brought with you to put you where you are today?
Wow. Gosh, Sam, I've learned so much. I feel like I've made every mistake you could make going through the process in the last 13 years, especially being a novice to the restaurant industry. And the lessons I've learned, especially going through COVID and having the COVID closures, and that being so unexpected, there's several takeaways that I have. One is you've got to be ready for anything. You really have to. When I say that, I mean have your cash ready, have your house
Mm,
in order. Just have your business and banking relationships ready. Don't take those for granted. Have great relationships with your landlord, your vendors, because that comes in handy when there's a crisis moment. So for us, we were able to ride the crisis out because we had amazing landlords that were supportive of us and worked with us. We had vendors that gave us a break. We had banking relationships that were able to help us through those hard times. And so developing those relationships is so important, because you never know when you need them. And so you can't take them for granted. It's a business that requires those relationships that's important, and can be the lifeline and make or break your business. So
yeah.
that's one key thing that I've learned. The other key thing is that, and it seems very obvious, but your team, your staff, them having loyalty to what you're doing and to the business, it's that was key to us, because when we had to let folks go, and then we called them back, many of them came back. I mean, there's folks that moved away, and they just moved out of state, but the folks that were still in state came back and worked with us, and came back and left whatever they were doing, and worked with us again, which made our relaunch significantly easier, because we had all our managers came back, every single
Wow.
one, which is so rare and I'm really grateful for, and that made the transition for us a lot easier. And I attribute that to just the investment we've made in our team over the years, that I feel proud that they would come back and work with us after a year or a year and a half hiatus. That was an important thing, and that's a lesson I've learned. And just for me to find, as a founder or entrepreneur, you got to be ready to adapt to changes, be flexible, um, innovate, innovate all the time. Don't get complacent. You could do great numbers, but and be profitable, but that can change overnight. So always invest in what you're doing, in your business, your people, your processes, so that you can take advantage of opportunities that come. So innovate constantly is something that I think small businesses, especially my size business, may not have the luxury to do at times, or feel like there's just not time to do that. But I think making that time is key to being that springboard into that next big major change for you or for your business.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, and that, of course, gets us to where you are today, and you're ready to grow, and you guys are franchising.
Yes.
Before we get into talking about what that might look like, why now? Why do you feel like now you're in that position to step on the accelerator a bit?
Yeah. So we actually were ready in 2019, and it came from just people coming to us and saying, can I open this here or
Hmm.
there? So it started off being just people coming to us, calling me, reaching out to me saying, I'd love a Bun Mee in Phoenix. I'd love a Bun Mee in Dallas. Are you franchising? What are you doing? So in 2019, we were actually ready to do that. And of course, COVID hit and the world changed. And so
Mm-hmm.
we've spent the last 3 or 4 years just reorganizing and keeping ourselves afloat, rebuilding, like I mentioned earlier, innovating. And so we're finally at that moment again where we feel like our processes, profitability, numbers, everything that we've put into place, our management team is ready to do this and to meet this moment. So right now seems like the best time after all these years that we've had to rebuild the company. And I'm so excited. I think this is a great moment for us, not just for us, but just even in the industry, um, for us to do this at this time.
Yeah, I am a fan of thinking of those sliding door moments where, if I went this path, if, what things would be like. And, to think about had you launched pre-COVID and whether or not COVID had happened, it seems to me like you might be in a much stronger position now, having gone through everything you did, because you learned so many of these lessons in the last 3 or 4 years. Do you feel like you're better prepared to be a franchisor now than you might have been 4 years ago?
Absolutely, Sam. Absolutely. I don't think that I would, looking back, hindsight's 2020, but I would not be as ready as I am now. I after everything we've been through, and because we didn't have that time to step away and look at our business. We were
Yeah.
just go go go. We just were opening a store every year and a half, every 2 years, and now this franchising just seemed to be the next logical step. So we were going to get ready to do that, and so it was a blessing in disguise, to be honest. So having that time to step away and having the world kind of slow down a little bit, so we could just really invest in taking a hard look at ourselves and our operations. I feel like this can't be a better time. Um, and so we've done the hard work. and we've reached a profitability level that I'm happy with, that pre-COVID numbers, I guess to say. And so we're at this point where we can execute on this and just be really successful.
Yeah. And how do you envision franchising going? What do you expect for this growth now?
So right now, we're focused on franchising in, basically our market is going to be anywhere we can get to in 2 hours. So we're looking
Hmm.
at Colorado and West. So a lot of just regional growth at the moment. We want to, and it's going to be thoughtful and deliberate in terms of who we bring on board. But I think the sky's the limit for us right now. Our goal, or our dream, is to be that premier Vietnamese fast casual national brand. I Right now, the Asian food sector is like one of the fastest growing in America, and as the American population continues to grow and diversify, folks are seeking for like more adventurous alternatives to burgers and pizza. And right now, when you look at the Asian fast casual market in the US, it's primarily dominated by Chinese brands and some Japanese brands for the most part. But there's not a prominent premier Vietnamese brand that's out there in the market today. We feel and that we could fit and meet that demand. And that is right now a great opportunity for us to go out there and present ourselves and be able to fill that gap in the market right now. And it's an exciting time to be able to do that as folks are starting to come out and eat out again and have and enjoy life again. And I think this is a great time for us to launch this brand to the rest of the
Yeah.
country and get out of San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Well, that's exciting, and I know you can do it. Denise Tran, the founder and CEO of Bun Mee. Denise, thanks so much for your time today. Really excited to see what you can do with this brand.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
That was my interview with Bun Mee's Denise Tran. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 5 takeaways. My first takeaway is that customers may not understand your product, and that's okay. You might remember in the early 2010s when there were global fast casuals popping up really all over the country, a lot of them really emulating what Chipotle had done for Mexican food, taking that fast casual business model and applying another global cuisine to introduce the mainstream to these new adventurous flavors. So Bun Mee did that with Vietnamese food and really was among the first to apply Vietnamese cuisine to that fast casual model. As Denise explained, a lot of people were not familiar with the ingredients that she was serving. Of course, sandwiches were familiar, but the banh mi, that core product they were selling, not as familiar to customers in the neighborhood where they first opened up. And as Denise pointed out, they were serving some ingredients like sardines, where that they were really not familiar to a lot of customers. But over time, that familiarity grew and grew. So when initially Bun Mee had to open up and had to really educate customers on what they were selling, what was on the menu, now she said they don't even really think about it. They just are familiar with those ingredients and with those menu items. This could be true of you. If you're thinking about taking a big swing with your menu, if you want to launch a concept or a menu item that might not be familiar to guests, of course, just know you will have to have some education. You will have to teach your customers what this is all about. But trust your customer. In time, they'll get it. They will become familiar with it. If it's tasty and if you've done your job, then eventually they'll just order it over and over again without even thinking about it. My second takeaway is that airport locations are tough work, but well worth the effort. You may operate airport locations, and if you do, you knew well what Denise was talking about when she shared about the difficulties that they've had in running 2 shops out of SFO. there are all sorts of considerations. Of course, you have to run in a very small environment. There's complexities with that. You have a really high volume hours, basically 12 hours of the day. You have to launch a breakfast menu when you're in an airport. You have to know all about security and how to have clearances and all of that. There are so many difficulties. But as Denise pointed out, it is so worth it because you really learn how to be efficient and operate through those complexities, which improves your non-airport locations too. Also, you're marketing to all these potential guests. You have people coming in, no matter what city you're in. You have tourists coming in or business travelers, and they get to know your brand, and they can look for you when they're out in your community. Then they take it with them back home, and they remember the business. So you're marketing the brand to potentially new guests. But finally, the other thing is, as Denise said, you're learning how to run out of a small footprint, and that can open doors for other non-traditional locations like college campuses, for example, or malls. You can learn what it takes to run a small footprint, efficient location, and that could, again, open the doors to new real estate opportunities in other parts of your community or other parts of the country. My third takeaway is that if you can succeed in a tough operating environment, you can succeed most anywhere. We talked a lot about what it's like to run a business in San Francisco. If you, like me, don't live in San Francisco, but you are watching from outside and kind of wondering what's going on there, San Francisco's taken its lumps the last 5 years. COVID hit it really hard. It's not recovered like a lot of cities have. Of course, being in California and being San Francisco, it's really expensive to run a business there. So there are any number of stories you can find about how businesses have failed or left or whatever it is. But let's face it, San Francisco is still one of the most beautiful, wonderful cities in our country. And as Denise said, it's still kicking. It's not dead. It's still there. They're doing fine. But she did point out some of the lessons they have learned having to operate out of this difficult environment, whether it's the high rents that they have to pay or all the regulation they have to follow. There are so many different things that have been, as I explained in the conversation, I kind of think of that, that donut you put on the baseball bat so it is heavier to swing. And when you take it off and you go up to the plate, it feels a lot easier to swing the bat. That's what it could be like for you. If you know what it's like to operate in a tough location, the state of California, perhaps, the city of San Francisco, whatever city it is you're in or a neighborhood you're in, just think about how when you go to a new location somewhere else, it could be a lot easier for you. And you're learning now what it takes to operate in that difficult environment. My fourth takeaway is that having your house in order can help you through crises. Look, I'm not going to rehash everything we learned in 2020 through 2022 because you were there. You probably learned your lessons too. But I thought that this point was important to emphasize from Denise, that she learned ahead of COVID, coming out of COVID. She pointed out that you need to have cash on hand, great relationships with vendors, great relationships with landlords. You need to have a good culture. And if you have all of these things, then no matter what crisis is around the corner, and for Denise and Bun Mee, COVID in San Francisco, that's about as tough as it gets. But if you have that house in order, if you're taking care of your team, you've got these great relationships, coming out the other side, you're going to be okay. Your team will stick with you. They'll be loyal. Your vendors, your landlords, they'll take care of you. That cash, having that extra cash on hand, it's going to get you through those tough spots. Denise points out, don't be complacent. Keep grinding, keep pushing, get that house in order. Don't sit back on your laurels, because whatever the crisis is around the corner, hopefully not another pandemic, but whatever it is, you need to be prepared. You need to have your house in order. My fifth and final takeaway is that there is no perfect time to grow. I am fascinated by this concept of, or this fact that Bun Mee almost franchised right before the pandemic. They were ready to go, and then they had to put that on hold until today. And it's just fascinating to think about, well, what if they had franchised and grown back then? Whether or not the pandemic had happened, it would have been totally different than what it is today. Better or worse, I don't know. We could never say. But Denise pointed out what they went through for the last 5 years has really fortified this brand and put it in a much stronger position to grow. So now that Bun Mee is franchising 5 years later than they expected to, they're in a position of strength and really well prepared for whatever could come around the corner, particularly as they grow. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again, and talk to you next week.
Blending up fun, freshly frozen beverages from shakes and smoothies to bowls and cocktails has never been easier than the For Real by Riches back-of-house blender. Simply grab a For Real by Riches frozen base cup, place it in a blender, and press start for hands-free, mess-free blending in under a minute. Customize or serve it as is. It's that easy. Learn more about For Real by Riches at richesusa.com/forreal-food service.